And so what I want to talk about today, I'll make sure I run my timer so I don't speak too long, is sort of not for an individual course, but a cross-course sort of communication between the students that I ran as part of 2 courses that I taught in the last semester. So the situation was we had CISC 352 and 867. 352 is the area of artificial intelligence, and 867 is a graduate course on deep learning. Deep learning is a sub area of artificial intelligence, and these are the 2 courses that are kind of like flagstone AI courses for our undergraduate and graduate programs, respectively. For 352, there was about 140 third and fourth year undergrads, and we had about 35 graduates inside of 867 and first or second year graduate students. 352 was fully asynchronous. We did have synchronous office hours after the time zoning poll that we did. We had a number of people that were in a 12-hour shift from us. But we ran the lectures as a fully asynchronous sort of delivery for that course. And 867 was mostly asynchronous, with the exception of we had invited speakers in on a weekly basis that would have sort of a block of 1 hour that we tied together. And in 352, it's their first exposure to this area of AI. And in 867, most of the students there are already doing their research in artificial intelligence. So they're very experienced with the field. And so the idea was to bring together students from both the start of their journey into artificial intelligence, if that's what they're embarking on, and those that are already embedded inside of that journey, both from the undergraduate and the graduate level, and see what we could do to sort of build a community and communicate across that boundary. So the process was we had 1 hour weekly sessions. This was a synchronous one, but it wasn't a necessary part of either course. It was sort of an optional one. They could use it as one way to express how they engaged in the course, which had some very minor marks at the end, but this was just one way of many that they could have accomplished that. So we had 1 hour weekly scheduled. The first 5 minutes were spent on course-specific questions. You know, your assignment is due for this course, and for the graduates, we're doing an invited lecture there. It was kind of to give the undergrads a little bit of a glimpse into a graduate course as well. The next 5 minutes was spent describing a specific technology or technique or a website that we were going to focus on for that hour. And then breakout rooms of 4 to 5 students for about 40 minutes for the main bulk of the session. We collected entries, and I'll explain in just a moment what the entries were from this exploration for the individual groups, and returned to the main discussion for another 5 to 10 minutes, talked about what we just did and the techniques behind it and that sort of thing, and then posted those entries as a poll for both classes to vote on. And so what was the best X, where X was the new topic of the week. And so the poll was something that sort of reached out to the rest of the class so they could collectively engage in this exercise that was going on, even if they weren't there to attend. So the topics of conversation from a week to week, it was always something AI related. It was something to provoke discussion on a particular AI technique, sometimes related to what we were covering in one of the courses. And it was often a website for interactive engagement of the technology. And it was always something that you could submit. So play with the website, produce something, and then submit it as a group as what you thought was the best example of what you've just done. I'm going to go through a few examples just to give a sense. There's a website, this person does not exist. You refresh the website and it's a new face every single time. These were the 2 faces that were tied for the most realistic looking faces among the different groups that we had in breakout sessions. And so this spurred conversation about how do you detect that these faces are fake? Do you look at the earlobes, or the facial hair is really good, so that's not a good way to detect? And so all the discussion around the ideas and technologies behind these sorts of things is really what spurred, is what we meant to spur on by focusing on these things. Another is cats and bags. And so you go and hand draw an outline of a cat or a bag, and it would try to fill it in. This is an example of where it works. It's what they put on the website. This is an example of what is actually produced. And so the students had a lot of fun with this. And some of our students are really good artists at drawing cats, but don't manifest into really good, realistic looking cats. And sort of discussing why that is and how it's breaking and why it's breaking sort of went into this week. And another is AI Mad Lib, using language models, and we had them explore both funny and nefarious and like what's going on inside of these language models to get an understanding of what it's learning and what it was trained on to sort of pick apart and see that. And these were the 2 that were voted the funniest or the most interesting auto completions. And so here the students would say part of a sentence and then leave a blank. So saying sorry in Canada is blank, and the language model filled it in with illegal, wrong, prohibited, forbidden, unacceptable. The pandemic will end on, and the language model thought Monday, Wednesday, Friday on me or on us were the most likely things to fill in. So sort of to pick apart what's going on into the data that's being used to train these systems is what came out of this week. So all of the topics, I talked about the top three. Some of it was just general discussion. The most controversial use of AI, the top voted was mass data collection. The best AI related song was Pink Floyd, Welcome to the Machine. So all of the students were sharing their musical tips and their best picks for that. The most absurd representation of AGI was from Hitchhiker's Guide. And Adventure Time was, again, another language model completion one, and there's entire stories that are built with just a small prompt. And so these were the topics that we sort of rotated through throughout the course of this semester. One interesting thing that came out of this particular one is that the students very much engaged on the musical level. And one of the students proposed that we do a shared Spotify playlist, and this was fully embraced by both of the classes. Students throughout the semester were throwing their own songs. I seeded it with the picks from the groups of that week. And then the individual students, as again, part of ways to engage in either of the courses, were putting their own favorite music on side of the playlist, and a lot of them listened to it throughout the semester. So that was a cool thing that worked. So what worked and what didn't? Alternating the time a few times throughout the semester to get those different time zones. It was quite essential because we did have a shift in where people were located. Priming the graduate students to share their research and priming the undergrads to ask about the graduate students' research was something that really helped the discussions go on. With these websites, does this person exist or not? They refresh a few times, they'll swap it around, they'll laugh about what they see, and when there's glitches in it, they'll pick their favorite, and they still quite often have 20 minutes to just sit around and chat. And so rather than just dump them in with a group of 4 to 5 and not tell them what to chat about, I primed the graduates to say, share your research, you're just starting, but you can get practice in sharing what it is that you're doing, and primed the undergrads to say, these are graduate students that are living and breathing AI. And so you can ask them about their research and ask them about techniques you're interested in. And this really had, I think, a positive impact on the discussions that happened here, communication across that barrier. The topics that had a rich interaction element were the ones that were perceived best. So things where they were playing along with the website and sharing the screenshots that they had. Topics that could be continually interesting for the full 40 minutes. Even if they already had their pick, they continued to draw cats and bags just to see what the website would do. These were the ones that worked better than the others. And turning it back to the full class for voting and building interest on this really helped bring up the numbers of those who were showing up to these sessions by showing to the rest of the class what was happening inside of them. Also, dropping into the rooms every once in a while was fairly useful. I gave them advance notice that I would be doing that, but popping in and sort of spurring on the conversation and helping them through if it was some of the weeks where the interface was a little clunky for them to get going. Now, what didn't work inside of this exercise, there was no great way to ensure a mix between the cohorts. And so there might be some breakout rooms. We used teams that had all graduates or all undergraduates, and we didn't get that sort of cross academic communication that was happening. Complicated tasks took some training, and so we would spend 10 minutes describing what was going on rather than have them out in their rooms. Allowing involved course-specific questions. Every once in a while, I would allow myself to get lost in the weeds of answering a particular question about what's coming up on a quiz for the undergraduate course, and everybody's just sort of waiting to go into that breakout room. Canceling sessions, there was once or twice throughout the semester that things just got a little too much and we had to cancel the session. And I didn't realize that it was such a highlight and a key part of some of the students week to week. And so this is one that I would, had I known, tried a little bit even harder to make sure it kept going. Some further observations, the cameras were mostly off, except those that are willing to put themselves on camera in the broad view. But when they went into the breakout rooms, everybody turned their camera on, or the vast majority did turn their camera on so they could communicate between the 3 others or so that were in that room with them. The grad students enjoyed and embraced talking about their research. It was an outlet for them to do so when they don't have the outlet of being in the lab to be able to make those connections and just practice talking about what it is that they do. And the undergrads really loved hearing about real AI research, not just what they see in the news or on blogs, but what's actually being done right now. The TAs actually started showing up and participating too. They saw the polls go up and so on, so they wanted to come in and participate in these things. And it really did sort of create a community and open the channel of communication between the undergraduates and the graduates that have a shared interest in artificial intelligence. It remains to be seen if it's only temporary, but it's really one that focused on that shared interest. So just to end with a couple of comments that came out. These were some of the feedback in the course survey that we put for the undergraduate level. Love AI meeting, divided into small groups, was really nice to communicate with each other, discuss the new topic each time. And this is how new friends were made. So it was a lot of group work for the undergraduate course, and a lot of the groups were formed as part of this process. I was able to connect with some students doing their masters and still in contact with them. And this is another comment that resonates as well. On the same lines, they were able to make contacts with the graduate students, and they still have that line of communication, asking them about their research and doing their own side projects to sort of get that research bug. And that was kind of one of the ultimate aims of this entire exercise, is to have the third-year undergrads get that research bug. So going into fourth year, their capstones are research focused, and we just turn them into graduate students 2 years down the road. So that's it on the lessons learned and the exercises that were done. And I'll leave it back to you, Lauren.